Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep, deep into the world of atomic habits, taking excerpts from James Clear's book.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
We'll really be exploring how these small changes we make, tiny, tiny adjustments, can actually lead to huge results. I mean, we always hear about, like, oh, make these big leaps, but what if it's really all about consistency and those tiny actions?
Right.
That's what we're looking at today.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful idea that Clear puts forward, like ditching that whole overhaul your life overnight kind of thinking,
Right.
and instead, like, fine tuning, right? Almost like a machine, little tweaks here and there.
Yeah, exactly. And he starts the book with this awesome story about the British cycling team.
Oh, yeah.
They'd been, like, pretty average for years,
Yeah.
but then they brought on this new performance director, Dave Brailsford, and he had this radical idea to focus on what he called the aggregation of marginal gains.
Yeah, like finding 1% improvement in every single thing they do.
Yeah, every single thing.
Everything. So, like, what kind of massage gel they were using, the design of the bike seats, even hand washing techniques to avoid colds.
It sounds kind of crazy. Like, how much difference could those things really make?
Right.
But I think that's the amazing thing. Those tiny tweaks actually started to add up.
Yeah.
Like, a few years later, this team went from, like, the underdog
Yeah.
to dominating, like, the Olympics
Totally, yeah.
and the Tour de France.
Dominating the Tour de France. It's amazing.
Incredible. And it makes me think, doesn't it, about that compounding effect.
Absolutely, the power of compounding when it comes to habits. Because think about it, if we're making 1% improvements every day for a year, we end up almost 37 times better.
Whoa, that's huge.
It's massive.
It's like compound interest,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You invest a small amount consistently, and over time, it just grows exponentially. Like, I remember trying to explain this to my niece, right, who was adamant about spending all her allowance, like every penny.
Yeah, kids, right.
And it took showing her, like, how it could multiply over time to really make her see it differently.
Yeah, sometimes you need that visual.
Totally. And the thing is, just like with the money situation, it works both ways.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If we're letting things slide, making 1% declines each day, that can also lead to a pretty dramatic result, taking us almost down to zero.
That's a great point. It really makes you think about those seemingly insignificant choices we make every single day.
Yeah, it puts it in perspective. And, Claire uses this great analogy of a plane, right? Slightly adjusting its course.
Okay, yeah.
Like a tiny change at takeoff might not seem like much,
Right.
but over a long flight, it could mean landing in a completely different city.
I like that.
It really is amazing how small shifts can just completely alter the course of our lives over time.
So true.
And this makes me think about, you mentioned earlier that you're trying to learn Spanish, right?
Oh, yeah, always.
Just think about that for a sec. What's one tiny action, like your 1%, that you could do each day that would move you closer to that?
That's a great question. It could be something as simple as listening to a Spanish podcast, like even for 15 minutes during my commute.
That's a good one.
Or like, learning a few new words every day. The key is just consistency. It's those tiny actions compounded, over time that make the real difference.
So true. But, it can't always be easy to stay motivated,
No, it's not.
especially when you're putting in the effort but not seeing big results right away.
Right. You hit that wall.
Clear calls this the valley of disappointment.
Oh, yeah, it's real. It's like that period where you're putting in the work, but it doesn't quite feel like those huge changes are happening yet.
Yeah. It'd be so easy to just, like, give up at that point.
Totally. It's where understanding the process, it becomes so important. I love how Clear uses that analogy of an ice cube melting. Like you keep applying heat, right? But nothing seems to happen until you hit that crucial point, and then suddenly, boom, the ice melts.
It's like you're working away at something, maybe not seeing the change on the surface, but you're actually building up to this breakthrough.
Exactly. It's a reminder to, trust the process, keep going, because those seemingly small efforts, they're accumulating, even if you can't quite see it yet.
Yeah.
They're building up beneath the surface.
Yeah, and it makes me think, how do we stay focused on that process instead of getting so fixated on the end goal?
Right.
We've all been there, right? I'll be happy when I reach this goal.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's a trap, I think.
It is. So how do we escape that trap?
Well, this is where Clear's whole idea of systems over goals comes in.
Okay.
Because we tend to get, caught up in chasing those big goals, right? Lose weight, write a book, get the promotion, whatever it is.
All those big, shiny goals.
Yeah, exactly. But he suggests, and this draws on, some wisdom from Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, that we should prioritize our system.
The system.
Yeah, the system. Like, what are the processes that drive those results, you
Right.
know? It's not about just focusing on the destination, but the journey, the steps we take each day to get there.
Okay, I see. So instead of just focusing on winning the championship, a coach would focus on like their system for how they train their team.
Exactly. The daily practices, the drills, the strategies, the team dynamics, all of it, that's the system. And for a writer, it's not just about finishing the book,
Right.
but about having a system for showing up and writing every day, hitting a certain word count, getting feedback, all of that.
Okay, I'm with you.
It becomes about falling in love with the process, the daily grind, rather than getting caught up in the outcome.
Makes sense. But I mean, what's wrong with being goal-oriented?
Good question.
I mean, isn't that what motivates us to achieve those big things?
But think about it this way. Winners and losers can often have the same goals, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. Achieving a goal, it might feel amazing for a moment, but it's a fleeting change if the system that got you there hasn't changed. That makes sense. So, like, you might hit your goal weight, right?
Yeah.
But if you haven't developed, like, sustainable habits for eating and exercise, you're probably going to go back to your old ways pretty quickly.
Exactly. And don't forget that whole "I'll be happy when" trap. Like, we tie our happiness to achieving that goal,
Yeah.
which keeps us, stuck in a constant state of striving, never really fully appreciating where we are now.
Yeah, you're always chasing that next thing.
Exactly. Always chasing.
And then what happens after you hit that big goal?
Right.
Like, you might feel lost. Like, what now?
Totally. You hit that goal and suddenly there's this void. You're like, okay, now what? But systems, on the other hand, they're about continuous improvement. It's a never-ending game that you just keep playing regardless of the outcome.
That's such a good point. It's a more fulfilling approach to life in general, I think.
I agree. It's about the journey, the growth, the constant learning and evolving. That's where the real magic is, I think.
I love that. So to sum it up, these atomic habits, these tiny changes we've been talking about, they aren't just these isolated actions. They're actually like the building blocks of a larger system.
And are, yeah. And it's that commitment to the process, the system of atomic habits that determines your progress. It's not about magic or overnight success. It's about consistently making those small, intentional choices day after day. And those are what ultimately lead to those remarkable results.
I love it. Well, I don't know about you, but I am already feeling inspired to start putting some of these ideas into practice.
Me too, me too. And luckily, we have a whole lot more to explore when it comes to building those atomic habits. Like, how do we actually make them stick? What are some concrete strategies we can use?
I was just going to say, I want more. So let's dive into some of Clear's specific strategies for making those positive changes stick.
Okay, let's do it. This whole thing about focusing on the process makes me think about that Japanese concept of kaizen.
Oh, yeah?
That continuous improvement through small incremental steps.
I love that.
It's an idea that's been huge in the business world, but I think it's super relevant to our personal lives too.
Totally.
Yeah.
So instead of those massive sweeping changes that we always try to make and then, give up on after like a week.
Yeah, exactly. New Year's resolutions, anyone.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
We should really be focusing on those tiny, sustainable tweaks that can become part of our everyday life.
I like that. Sustainable tweaks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where Clear's framework for building atomic habits comes in.
Okay.
He breaks it down into these 4 laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Okay. Those sound like simple enough.
Yeah, deceptively simple.
Right.
But I bet there's a lot more to them than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely.
So, what's the key to making a habit obvious? Okay, so think about it. We're creatures of habit, right? Often running on autopilot.
Yeah.
So if we want to establish a new habit, we need to make those cues for that habit super clear and obvious in our environment.
Okay.
So instead of vaguely saying to yourself, I'll exercise more, you need to get specific. Like, I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk every morning before breakfast.
And maybe lay out your workout clothes the night before.
Exactly. Visual cue. Right. I have a friend who does that, swears by it. She says it just helps her overcome that initial resistance of getting out of bed.
Totally. It's like you're setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. Designing your environment to support those desired habits. You want to read more, put a book on your bedside table. Want to eat healthier, keep a bowl of fruit on the counter where you literally can't miss it.
Yeah, make those cues impossible to ignore.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got obvious down. What about attractive? The second law. How do we make something we should do into something we actually want to do?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. I feel like we've all struggled with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's all about tapping into that power of reward and motivation.
Right.
We're much more likely to stick with habits that we enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So we need to find ways to make those desired habits appealing.
Okay. So instead of like forcing yourself to go for a run when you hate running,
Yeah, yeah.
you find an activity that you actually look forward to. Like for me, I joined a rock climbing gym.
Oh, nice.
Never thought I'd be into something
Right.
like that, but I found like this awesome community, and now I actually crave that feeling of pushing myself, physically and mentally.
That's awesome. It's finding what works for you. And, you can also try pairing a habit you want to build with something you already love.
Okay.
So let's say you love listening to podcasts, but you also want to meditate more. Make a rule that you only listen to your favorite podcasts while you meditate.
Ooh, that's clever.
Right.
Right.
Creates that positive association, makes it more likely to stick.
I like it. Okay. So we've made it obvious. We've made it attractive. What's next?
Make it easy.
Oh, okay.
This is all about reducing friction, lowering that barrier to entry. Because the easier a habit is to do, the more likely we are to do it, right? So we need to streamline that process and remove any unnecessary obstacles.
Yeah, it's like that saying, work smarter, not harder.
Right. Exactly. Instead of relying solely on willpower, you're setting yourself up for success. So if you're trying to eat healthier, don't try to overhaul your entire diet overnight. Start with one small change. Maybe it's just adding a salad to your dinner every night. Or if you want to start working out, don't sign up for a gym that's a 30-minute drive away. Find one that's close to home or work. Just make those initial steps as effortless as possible.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like remove those obstacles.
Absolutely. Okay, ready for the last one?
Hit me.
Make it satisfying. This one's important because we're wired to repeat behaviors that make us feel good.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. So we need to find ways to make our desired habits feel rewarding, even if it's just a small sense of accomplishment.
So like tracking your progress in a journal, or like giving yourself a mental high five when you finish something.
Exactly. Those little things can make a big difference. I know for me, like checking things off my to-do list, strangely satisfying.
Oh, I'm the same way.
Right. It's a visual reminder of, look what I accomplished today.
I love it.
It's like those small rewards add up and reinforce those positive feelings associated with the habit. If you're trying to save money, you might create a visual tracker where you can see your savings grow over time. It's about making that process feel rewarding, even in those early stages when it might not feel like you're making a big dent.
So basically, Clear's framework is really about strategically designing our environment and our habits to support the changes we want to make.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just about grit and willpower. It's about working with our brains, not against them.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful. Like, we have more agency than we realize when it comes to shaping our habits and ultimately shaping our lives.
100%. It's this reminder that even those small changes applied consistently can have this huge impact on our well-being and our future.
It is. And this whole idea of falling in love with the process is really resonating with me. I think it's so easy to get caught up in chasing those big, flashy goals, but it's the day-to-day journey that matters.
Absolutely. And Clear doesn't just focus on building good habits.
Oh, he doesn't.
He also provides a framework for breaking those bad ones that might be holding us back.
Oh, interesting. What's his approach there?
Well, he calls them the 4 laws of behavior change, but in reverse. Make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. It's about flipping the script on those tempting cues and rewards that often lead us astray.
Ooh, I like that. Flipping the script. So if you're trying to cut back on social media, you might delete the apps from your phone.
Yep, make it invisible. Or if you're trying to eat less junk food, you just don't keep it in the house. Make it difficult to access.
Yeah, put those tempting treats on the highest shelf in the pantry, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. Increase the friction, decrease the appeal of those unwanted behaviors. The more effort it takes to engage in that bad habit, the less likely you are to do it. I know, for me, I used to mindlessly scroll through social media before bed, so I started leaving my phone in a different room at night.
Ooh, how's that been working?
Game changer. I sleep so much better. more present in the mornings,
Huh.
and no more of that guilt for, like, wasting time on things that don't even really matter.
I love it. That's such a good example of how those simple shifts can make a big difference.
They can. And speaking of changing our behaviors, Clear also emphasizes the importance of something he calls identity-based habits.
Identity-based habits.
Yeah, it's not just about changing our actions, it's about shifting our beliefs about who we are.
Okay.
It's that idea that our habits shape our identity and our identity shapes our habits.
Almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to choose habits that are aligned with the kind of person we want to become. Like, if we see ourselves as healthy individuals, we're more likely to engage in those healthy habits.
It's like casting a vote for that desired identity with each action we take.
I like the casting a vote. So if you want to be a writer, you act like a writer. You write every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. If you want to be a musician, you practice your instrument regularly. It's about embodying that identity through those consistent actions.
Yeah. And then over time, as you accumulate those small wins and see the progress, your belief in your own ability to change, it gets stronger.
Exactly. It's like a positive feedback loop. Which leads us to a really powerful question. How much of our lives do we spend on autopilot, just going through the motions? What if we were more intentional about choosing habits that align with our values and aspirations?
That is a really powerful question. I mean, we all have the capacity to create positive change,
We do.
but it starts with, like, aligning those actions with our desired identity.
I agree. And that's what makes this whole concept of atomic habits so powerful. It's not about, overnight transformations. It's about making those intentional choices day after day that shape us into the people we want to be.
Yeah, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of atomic habits.
Hmm.
Seriously.
Oh, it's been fun.
I feel like I have this whole new perspective on like personal growth and development.
That's great to hear. I hope you feel equipped to start, experimenting with some of these principles and see what works for you.
Absolutely. And for me, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not about being perfect, it's about progress.
Couldn't agree more. It's those 1% improvements compounded over time that lead to those big results. So what's one small change you can make today? That's the question I always ask myself.
I love it. What a great thought to leave us with. And remember, everyone, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world of knowledge. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep those atomic habits in mind and keep striving for that 1% better every day.
It really is amazing, right? How much power we have to actually shape our own lives when we actually stop and think about it.
Yeah. It's not about being perfect, though, is it? It's about progress.
It is. It's about progress, not perfection. And those small, consistent actions, those atomic habits, they're the things that end up taking us to some pretty incredible places. One thing that I think is super inspiring about Clear's work is his emphasis on falling in love with the process.
Oh,
It's not about getting fixated on some distant goal, but finding joy in the daily pursuit of, whatever it is we're trying to achieve.
I love that. So, like, instead of just focusing on the result, the end product, we should really be thinking about how to make the journey, like the day-to-day experience itself, enjoyable, right? Make it
Yeah.
rewarding.
Yeah, exactly. It's about embracing the whole experience, the ups and downs, the little victories, the setbacks, seeing it all as part of this larger, meaningful narrative. And honestly, I think that's what makes it sustainable. When we're so focused on just the process, the outcome often takes care of itself.
It does. It's funny how that works, right? I think that's such a powerful message because it's so easy to get caught up in that, like, I'll be happy when mentality. But maybe, like, the real happiness lies in finding that fulfillment in the actual journey.
Totally. It's a shift in perspective for sure, but it's one that can make a huge difference, I think, in how we approach our goals and just our lives in general.
I agree. Well, this whole deep dive into the world of atomic habits has been so insightful. I mean, I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for creating positive change in my life.
I'm so glad to hear that. And, I really hope you feel empowered to start actually putting some of these principles into practice, see how they work for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And for me, like, the key takeaway is that it's not about these drastic changes, right?
Right.
It's not about doing it all at once. It's about those tiny 1% improvements that compounded over time can lead to those incredible results.
Exactly. So what's that one small change you can make today? That's the question I always try to ask myself. What's one tiny step in the right direction? What's one thing that moves me, even just a little bit closer to those goals and the person I want to be?
I love that. What a great way to wrap things up. It's so inspiring. And for everyone listening out there, remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Mm,
Keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep diving deep with us into this amazing world of knowledge.
absolutely. And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into another fascinating topic.
We can't wait. Until then, keep those atomic habits in mind and keep striving for that 1% better every single day.